Hello and welcome to Workbook 4, Channels and Customer Relationships. If you've not watched any of the videos up through this week, you're going to need to make sure you go back and do that. Make sure you also pay specific attention, close attention to last week's video on week 4, customer feedback to assess product market fit, before we ever get to this section. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this section for this week. For your assignments this week, Activity 13, this is all your feedback from you testing the minimum viable product. So last week you went out and we're gonna test this thing, right? Then you're going to use the information to now come back into your business model canvas. So some of these require longer answers. Some of them are just a yes, no. So is your understanding of your customer, client, donor problem accurate and relevant? You just need a yes or a no there. Same thing with this one, just a yes or no. Did it fit clients and funders? Does it solve the problem? Yes or no. Would they use the product or program? So specifically for your folks in the nonprofits, will this person participate in this program? Will this person fund this program? Again, kind of a yes or no. And then this last question, this is where we actually ask you to provide some information. So when someone is considering buying this product, or this person is going to buy the program, let's say buy, they're going to be transacting the hours in a day, their time to participate in the program. So what is the thing that's going to stop them from doing that? And those are things you're going to want to address as you start to iterate the model a little bit more. Remember, you don't want a barrier. You want them to be able to adopt this pretty easily. And is there anything that needs to change? Are there key aspects of our business model canvas that needs to change? It could be a yes or no. If it is yes, then you tell us what those changes are going to be, which is going to take you then up into 14. Now, this is when we really start zeroing in and creating a great statement. And so here's the statement for a value proposition. You'll do this for each segment. So for the client, the customer, the donor, who's looking for this specific problem, that they have this specific thing they need to deal with, what is your organization, or what have you developed? Here you can see how it is. Type of solution, fast working, how it works, that helps do what for them. So this is the formula we want you to stick with. And this is everything you've done to this point brings you right to this position, answering this question. Activity 15 is now you take what you just learned and you come back and you start updating documentation again. So here are the questions. Who are the stakeholders involved in your process? You could be your customer, client, donor. Who typically plays the role of influencer and economic buyers? That could be different people. And remember, the economic buyer is the one that's actually writing the check. So in the case of a client, it could be the donor being the actual economic buyer because they're funding this. What are the stages and lengths of the sales cycle? So in other words, how long does it take you to get a person involved, to be able to communicate with them in time? And how long does it take? So once you get the message out there, how long does it take them before someone reaches out, contacts you, someone meets back with them, they interview, they get you all the way through until they're actually either entered into your program or they purchase the product? Well, that's that sales cycle. And so what is the profile of the typical customer, client, funder? And there's exercises that'll help you in that this week. And then what's your best strategy to be able to sell? All those topics are going to be contained in the lessons for this week. So using this activity, you'll go back and again, you'll update your documentation. Now here is the sales funnel that Andrew's already talked about here for this week. And so this is a thing you're going to be keeping in your mind as you move into the next type of, the next slides. We start focusing on the business model canvas channels. And then number 4, our customer relationships. So in activity 16, now you're going to start focusing on that. Activity 16 here is looking at that get, keep, grow funnel. You're going to use that to guide this process. So on the get part of it, how are you going to acquire them and how will you activate them? So that's the big thing right there. And so it can take a lot of lead time. So just think through the process of how are you going to acquire. your customer, client, or donor, and then how are you going to get them to make a choice for either the product or the service that you're offering. Then the next thing is how are you going to keep them? Now, in the case of programs, you're going to have to think through attrition. So and same thing with donors. How do I keep them actively engaged? How to keep them happy? How do I keep them participating? That's a big question that you need to answer. So you need to think through that. Talk about other people in your organization that may be able to help you with some insight there. And then lastly, as you saw in the last presentation for this week, it's, how are you going to do the following with these people? It's either upselling, next sell, cross-sell, and referrals. Now, some of that may not sound like it has applicability to the nonprofit, but again, if you go back and review this week's presentation for this week from Andrew, you will see some great connections here on that. Anything that you don't understand, I really recommend you just Google some of these phrases that you may not be familiar with. I think they can help you quite a bit. Okay, activity 17 here is the marketing funnel and stage analysis. And Andrew's you've already seen this for this week's presentation. So, when you're done with this, strip out this activity 17 up here. But this marketing funnel is a pretty significant document because stage one could be, you've gotten the word out to, 1,000 people. Stage two, maybe, 500 people respond. They want to know more. Maybe step three is you've interviewed 250. And then maybe stage four is, 50 people decided to go ahead and enter the program. So it's important that you understand the stage because especially when you start talking about scale, and it can become predictable. So it can get to the point where that of every X amount of people that you contact or that you offer a program, X amount of people are going to respond to that. And that can give you an indicator on how it may impact staffing and funding for the future. Next, we deal with the marketing and your growth strategy. So where are your customers, clients, and donors looking today? So we start talking, I don't want to say competition, but it is competition. So, where are customers getting like kind of services today? And then how are you going to get in front of them? It could be visiting camps. It could be going to, if you're in a rescue mission setting, it could be going to different fairs, job fairs, health fairs, etc. And how are you going to achieve your target growth rates? Now remember, this is hypothetical a lot of times. So you're just trying to think through the process of, boy, how am I going to grow this thing at this rate? How will you achieve your conversion rates from one stage to another? So if you go back here, how are you actually going to get a person to go from here to here, stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4? What's it going to take to actually get that decision to move them from one stage to another? And then what are the most important unique channels and methods you're going to use to find and win these people? It could be social media. It may not be. It may be word of mouth. It's just you need to be able to identify what's important and unique to your segment that's going to help you find those people and to activate those people. And then lastly here is, how are you going to do this any differently than anybody else? Because honestly, if you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing the same way, there's not a lot of reason for someone to choose you. So you need to think through why your process is any better than anybody else's. Activity 19, competition. Now, I just talked about that in the previous slide, but here, where do you exist in a larger overall market space? So if you're talking about rescue missions, maybe there's more than one rescue mission in your setting, or maybe you're the only one, but there's a whole host of different organizations that provide like services. So you want to be able to identify where you sit in that space, and then what are your advantages? Maybe if you're in a faith-based context, maybe you have a faith-based setting, but nobody else does. Maybe you're the only faith-based organization in town, and that becomes an advantage for you. So here, pardon me, how is your place in the market unique to you? That comes back to possibly your faith-based stance. And the right one, the place in your market for organizational growth. If you're offering things that, like, again, you're in a faith-based rescue mission setting and you're offering programs and processes that may not fit those cultural values, then it's not going to be a good thing to launch. And then lastly, who are your direct competitors? And this goes back to where do you exist in the larger overall market space. You may realize that there's a lot of organizations out there doing what you do. Maybe there's some that are not as unique as others. Maybe there's several faith-based organizations. And that's where you start talking about, well, that's who maybe my real competition is those folks, this subset. So, if they're doing well, what is it they have? What's their, special sauce that makes them successful? And how do you make yourself appear really different? And then lastly, once you learn all these things, you're going to drop them here into your revised business model canvas. Again, focus on channels and customer relationships only. You will need to go back and make sure that you've updated items 1, 2, and 5. That is, the segments, the value propositions, and the revenue. And then we expect significant revisions to your canvas. I'll be looking for those revisions. So as you upload each one, I'm going to be looking back into your slide deck to see if you're incorporating changes that we recommend. All right, that's it. We'll see you next week.